Now we can kind of, now that we've sort of explained how people came to the Americas, we can kind of break this up into North America, Central America, and South America, because each one are a little distinctive and unique in its settlement patterns. Here's a great map. This is called the Tribal Nations map of North America. Each one of these, and what's nice about this map is that these are the using the actual names of the tribes themselves instead of the sort of the westernized names for them. But as you can see from this map, that by 5000 BCE, 1000 BCE or 0 if you want, maybe that's an easier place to put it. Almost all the parts of the Americas were inhabited. Right? You have just North America. I mean, even today is very open to human settlement. I mean, there's everything you would need in the form of resources, nature, environments, climates, which made it very very settleable for all these different groups of people. And if you lay over that map of languages, sort of some language similarities. This would be the Algonquin. There's some language similarities down here in Southeast. Up here, this sort of Chinook language is the Northwest. You can kind of see, I mean, look at the amount of peoples along the West Coast here, which, maybe this could also be, a feature of coastal migration, that this was a hotspot of where a lot of people settled. But it also, the Northwest and California are also very hospitable to humans as well. So that's this map's kind of nice, and then just kind of broad. We'll go into this a little bit later when we come back to Americas later on in the semester and fill this in with a little bit more about each the peoples that lived in these different regions. But just kind of the sort of broad strokes with the different geographical regions of North America. Here you have the Arctic, which people have always lived in. I mean, by feet, people walked over here. So this is one of the earliest settlement areas. Inuit culture. Living in, not much in the way of farming because of the climate and the soils and the sun. So living off a lot of what was available there: reindeer, seal, those kind of things. And then if you come down, the Great Lakes region was always very similar. This is the Algonquin language as well. A lot of woodlands, mound building. They had more permanent settlements here. There's this thing called the Hopewell culture that emerges kind of in sort of some of the rivers around here. This is where we get some of the early mound buildings of the region, which indicate connections between different groups there. We'll come back to this a little bit later in the semester. Southeast, this is down here. This is the Choctaw, Cherokee groups, the Cree. This is a very fertile area as well. This is modern day, the South, the American South. But the reason cotton did so well down there is this land is very, very fertile. All sorts of plants and animals. And they did have some permanent settlements down there. Southwest, this is sort of the modern day Arizona and New Mexico. The Colorado River obviously is a major river source down here. So this would more like the oases in the desert, and also sort of find a lot of settlements along rivers all throughout these regions. We talked about Northwest and West Coast, a lot of maritime resources. We also found these giant oak forests. Which again, this idea of terraforming, that these early humans didn't just show up and let's just we're at the mercy of the world around us, but they actually were altering their environments. They were doing collect active burns in the dry season to limit huge forest fires, and they were planting a lot of these oak forests to harvest the acorns, and acorns were a major source of proteins and various things in the Northwest and West Coast. And then a lot of the oak forests that are there today are remnants of these early managed land systems. And then kind of in the middle here, the flat plains of what is now the Midwest, and even up here in Canada. This is where the buffalo lived, and a lot of these societies and peoples that lived there had a very more nomadic society, following the buffalo around and living a lot on the products that came with them. And again, also when it got cold, it moved down south, and when it got warm, moved back up north. So kind of just shows some regions of North America and sort of the lifestyles that existed there. And then Mesoamerica, sort of Middle America, this is where we get much more evidence of more complex societies, larger, if you will, early kingdoms. And the reason we get that there is this is where we do see the advent and of agriculture and very much sort of this shift to I guess you could say the Neolithic shift within Mesoamerica. And the one big crop here that they figured out how to make was corn. And here you can see this is the early, I think it's called Tesniat, the early sort of grass, and then were bred a little more, and then ultimately bred into the corn we have today. And here you can see all the different varieties of corn. So this is one of the big domesticated um, plants from the Americas. The one thing the Americas didn't have is they didn't have a lot of domesticated animals. They didn't have cows. The animals there were bison, which are huge, and they're double the size of a cow and not very good to tame. Down in South, they did have dogs, and down in South America, they did do llamas and alpacas. But sheep, goats, I don't think they had in the way of chickens. They didn't have any of these domesticated animals that they had in other parts of the world. And then some other things that they grew today, this is called the Three Sisters, were corns, beans, and squash. So here you can see corns, beans, and squash. And these are sort of symbiotic plants in that the corn grows up, supports the beans. The beans wind around. The beans like to grow up, so they wind around the corn. Beans are also good because they convert nitrogen to the soil. And then the squash, the third sister here, grows outwards and covers the ground, sort of keeps weeds from growing. So this is the early intensive agriculture of Mesoamerica. And we do find this in North America as well, just not as concentrated, because we do see early state formations in Mesoamerica. The earliest being these Olmecs that existed along the sort of west coast. Early cities, early urban centers, a lot of trade networks with jade and obsidian. They made these huge heads. We don't really know why. We don't have any. They did have a written language, but we haven't deciphered it yet, so we don't really know much about them. A lot of it is archaeology. They flourished, from about 1200 to 100 BCE. And kind of existed and ended with their neighbors. We'll talk about the Mayans here and Teotihuacan up in this area as well. It's one of the earliest forms, earliest complex society. We know they had a religion, very complex religion, which a lot of the religious figures and stories are shared within a lot of these worlds of Mesoamerica. One is the idea that water is for blood, that the humans were created by the gods, and water, and the gods gave water, humans water and food and all that. And in exchange, humans feed the gods with blood. So this idea of sort of human sacrifice was very much embedded into this religious system. All of these societies had a very distinctive calendar system. We'll look at the Mayans more specifically. And all these societies had this really interesting ball game. Another plant that grew in the Americas was rubber, the rubber tree. So they made this ball game where it was sort of like each society names it a little bit different, something different, but you couldn't use your hands. You had to use your feet and your hips and your head, and there were little rings. It was played in an arena, and you had to get the ball up through this ring. And this ball game was, some of it was entertainment, some of it was like sort of mock battle where different groups would, the winner would get prize. Some of it they believe even some of this was made like and war captains would play, and the loser would become one of these sacrifices. But these ball games and these arenas for these ball games are a feature of a lot of the urban sites of these early worlds. So the Olmecs were first, and this other major city is the city of Teotihuacan, which is still around an area. It's in central Mexico, near Mexico City. It used to be this big lake bed, so it was very fertile, grew a lot of food, and about 100 CE, this pyramid of the moon and pyramid of the sun, these huge pyramids were built in this urban center of Teotihuacan. And it was at its height, maybe about 200,000 people, one of the largest urban centers in all of the ancient world. Here's some Teotihuacan. Here's some gods. Here's some pottery there. And then the last sort of group of Mesoamerica here would be the Mayan civilization. Again, a lot of cities. This is Tikal. kind of see these large cities all throughout the Mayan Yucatan world. They have urban infrastructure, temple complexes, royal palaces, agriculture. Early cities, date back to like 750 BCE, 200 BCE, but sort of the height, the golden age of the Mayan world a little bit later, 600 to about 900 CE, and then about 1100 CE, the Mayan culture sort of breaks away for probably multiple reasons, changes in environment and overproduction. We're not really 100% sure why that's the case. We do know that there was a lot of roads and exchange networks among them. We're still learning about the Mayan world. There's this new technology called LiDAR that can look through a lot of these areas. So here's what the Mayan world looks from with the jungle, but you throw the LiDAR on it, you can see all these the remnants of these roads and these cities and the urban infrastructure. And these roads are starting to map these entire trade networks of the Mayan world. So we're learning a lot more about it as new technologies come about. We knew they had a shared culture. They had art. They had a religion, the Popol the creation stories. The gods created humans from corn and water. This is one of the creation stories we still have today. Actually, humans were the third attempt. There was mud and wood; those didn't work, and so humans with clay and water came about. And then for the human, in response, the humans have to give blood. We know there was social stratification of royal families, priests, scribes, artisans, farmers. Here's a Chan Balam, a king of the Mayans. Here's some pottery. Here's these murals, artistic murals we found at temples. We know they had an extensive calendar system. So this is they had 365 days and 260 ritual days that then would overlap. And the solar rituals go on a 52-year cycle. And they actually have sort of dated the date of creation in the Mayan world as August 11th, 3141. So they have these long, very complex calendrical systems. They have a writing system. This is the Mayan writing system. This is why we know a lot about it. So these glyphs. Some of these are syllables, some of these are full sounds, kind of like hieroglyphs, deciphered in the 1980s. And then they ended up finding a bunch of these really interesting old Mayan codexes, sort of like early books made on this paper they made in the Americas, actually in Europe, because they were brought over by the early Spanish colonists. The Dresden Codex was about 78 pages, and now we can read this. So it tells us a little bit about astronomy, religious ceremonies, names, kings. So we can see the art in written words there. Oh, sorry. And the Mayans also had math as well. So we have, this is their mathematical system. They had 0, 1s, 2s, 3s. Here's how you would do the math. So if you wanted 1 times 20 plus 8, and you can do complex figures with these math. And here's this mathematical equations. This is how they set up dates, reigns of kings, all sorts of things. So we actually do have quite a bit that we're working through, or at least the amount of literature that we have from the Mayans. We have we can make out as we're working through this. We have somewhat of a good idea of their time frame, and because we can adapt that through their records, through their texts. And we'll finish up here, and then the next little part will go into South America, see what's going on down there.